Hey guys, welcome back to the Franchise Tagged podcast. Now on Spotify. Go check that out. Link in the description down below. Always forget to plug it. We've been uploading there all season, or this second. My God, this second season we've been uploading there, and have forgotten to plug it at all in the videos. So gotta shout that out. But kicking things off today, season 2, episode 5, we're gonna have our standard pick'ems recap. Then we're gonna go over our game by game recap. And then we've got a couple other just generic topics for you, some trade talks perhaps, and then some injury updates. And then stocks are open this week. We can trade stocks for NFL stocks. We don't do actual stock trading, at least not as a segment of the podcast.
Not as our NFL knowledge. We're not putting our money on that.
Yeah, and then we'll get into our pick'ems. But if Elijah, this is something you don't normally do. Do you want to kick us off with the pick'ems recap?
I do, because I went ahead and I had, as I had mentioned last episode, my historically bad pick'ems week of 6-10, the worst I ever have. And I went ahead and I bounced back with not my historically best, but a very good 12-4 record this week. So the ones I got correct this week was the Cowboys over the Giants, the Falcons over the Saints, the Bengals over the Panthers, Vikings over Packers, Texans over Jags, Colts over Steelers, Broncos over Jets, Buccaneers over Eagles. I did not get the Commanders game right. 49ers I got beating the Patriots, because duh. Chiefs I got winning. Raiders I got winning. Bills, Dolphins were another two that I missed. Primetime games, so that kind of hurts my primetime record there. But I did get Lions beating the Seahawks. And then I skipped one game there, and it was my lock of the week, Rams losing to the Bears. So that hurts. From Thursday night football all the way until the 4 o'clock window, it was my one inaccurate pick'ems, and that burns. But on to yours.
Yeah, shout out real quick to the official Franchise Tag Twitter. We don't use it often, but this week we actually did post on it, because we had both agreed at like 11:50. We were like, Jordan Love is playing this game, but we're still both feeling like the Vikings are going to take it. And so I ended up sending a tweet out right before the game started. So it was nothing fishy was going on. We just decided to lock the pick on the Vikings over the Packers, despite Jordan Love starting, even though we both agreed on having that caveat, which we don't normally do. But either way, we both agreed on the Vikings, both got that one right. But starting from the top, I picked the Giants over the Cowboys, but we'll get into that a little later. Then I got the Falcons over the Saints. I locked the Bengals and got that one correct over the Panthers. I picked the Rams and was wrong. Then I got Vikings, Texans, Buccaneers over Eagles, 49ers over Patriots, Chiefs over Chargers, Raiders over Browns, Ravens over Bills, and Lions over Seahawks correct, missing the Dolphins and Titans game, the Commanders-Cardinals game, Jets, Broncos, Steelers, Colts, Rams, Bears, which I already said, and then Cowboys, Giants, which I also already said, to have a 10-6 record on the week. Nice bounce back for me. Not quite as nice as yours.
Yeah, yours was more of a bounce back to the height we had of week 1. But what are our yearly records looking like for yourself?
Overall, I don't think this is updated. Yeah,
I just updated it for you.
Okay. Sick. We're prepared here at Franchise Tagged. I am 34-30 on the year with a 3-1 lock record. And your lock record, man, I updated that earlier, and I was just, damn.
It's rough. It's rough out here for a guy named Elijah making picks for the Franchise Tag podcast. I am 1-3 for my locks, but I am sitting right there with you at 34-30.
Yeah. It's a, pretty even season from the both of us. You had your 2 bad weeks in a row, and then I had my one really bad week, and then I was pretty standard for the rest of it. Par for the course as far as my picks go. But I think that's all we got for pick'ems. We'll get into the game-by-game recap now, starting off with that Thursday night football game, the Giants and Cowboys. I said it on Thursday night. I don't regret picking the Giants, because I was if I had picked the Cowboys, I would have locked the Cowboys. That's how confident I would have been that the Cowboys were beating the Giants. But because I told myself, no, this is upset alert, Giants could win it, pick the Giants just to be on top of things. And they actually almost did. They had a couple of strange calls not go their way. And by strange calls, I mean literally a face mask called on the wrong team.
Yeah.
Which was just one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. And I've changed my stance on the refs help the Chiefs to the refs just suck in prime time, and especially on Thursday night. So that's
I agree with you for the early on the refs got involved, and they got involved in a very poor light with how they treated that face mask, and it was like a 30-yard swing, like for the Giants. Like they would have gained way more yards, but they lost yards because it was on them and the play itself. But for the most part, for the rest of that game, like the Cowboys were just committing penalties. Like the Cowboys came out to be the ones who suffered most from penalties, despite the early, like it was a point changing swing early on. But man, the Cowboys racked up penalties throughout that game.
No, I've thought about like that game single-handedly made me think about creating a new way to watch football, which is to count up the amount of flags thrown, and if that amount is higher than the amount of points scored, the refs win the game. And I am all for keeping that going, but I don't think I have the time, energy, or resources to be able to see how many flags are thrown. You can see how many penalties are called, but typically those resources don't count the ones that are declined or if there's multiple penalties on one play. So I don't think I'd be able to quite do what I want to do, which is this play had 3 penalties called on it. 1 was accepted. So in the stats, there's 1 penalty on that play, but in reality, there were 3. So
yeah, I think, taking your idea and instead changing it into a drinking game would be very dangerous with how this season's of reffing, with how reffing this season has gone. So don't do that.
Yeah,
disclaimer,
alcohol
don't
poisoning is real, guys.
do that. And especially do not drive after the fact. But
Shout
yeah,
out
the
Rashid
reffing, I knew it was coming.
Sorry, his name's on the sheet. I didn't mean
I know,
it, guys.
I know. I saw the name on the sheet and I was like, that's why I even said it. That's why the disclaimer was there.
Oh, guys. Oh, it's bad. It's real bad. It's really bad.
We're early on real bad. All right. But, besides the point, I think that reffing, being really bad in prime time, it's also just players are committing a lot of penalties league-wide, it feels like.
Yeah. I think refs are just flag happy. Like they're a little bit more strict with it, and I think in the Chiefs games that I watch, I just see it more when it's like, oh, that's a ticky-tack penalty in favor of the Chiefs, because I'm hate watching, I guess is what's going on. But that's a me problem. I got to figure that out on my own time, on my own mental. That's not a problem I got to bring to the podcast. But we can move off of that Thursday night football game. I just wanted to put out there that the Giants put up way more of a fight than they should have against a Cowboys team that was supposed to be pretty good. So,
yeah.
Jordan Love's 0-2. That's the next thing we got down here. In games that he has played, the Packers are 0-2, and in games that Malik Willis has taken all the snaps, they are 2-0. So clearly, that means that Malik Willis is the better quarterback, and they need to go with him for the rest of the season.
Yes, I mean, that's what all the TikTok talking heads would have you thinking. I think that, you mentioned we swapped our pick on this, and my main reason was I thought about it, and I was like, they've dismantled better quarterbacks than Jordan Love this year. And he's coming back from an injury, so he's not going to be he's just had a great game last week. He has no momentum to ride off of. So I was like, yeah, I don't think this is going to go their way. Now, it was a very close game.
Yeah, it ended up, it was 28-0, and I texted you, and I was like, dude, that pick swap's looking great, and it ended up being a 2-point game, 2-point win for the Vikings, so a bit closer than I think we had thought, especially when the Vikings were up 28-0, but...
Yeah, they certainly let them back into it, and I think that, luckily, the pick swap worked out in our favor.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Rashee Rice. Do you want to go ahead and get into the Chief game takeaways since you were hate watching that one?
Yeah, the Chiefs. I mean, Travis Kelce's back. Welcome back, Travis Kelce. He kind of, slow start to the season, but then when teams are like, oh, maybe he's washed, let's not triple team him, then he goes off and he gets himself 8 catches. And then there was the Mahomes interception. Rashee Rice bats the ball out, and then Mahomes tries to hit the DB and ends up taking out Rashee Rice's knee. The tests that they were doing, I mean, it looked bad at the time, and Andy Reid said it's not good coming out of the locker room at half. I think that was the exact quote. But so far, no conclusive word yet on whether it's a tear or not. So there's hope that it's not. I think that if it was torn, news would have come out about it already, because typically they can tell pretty early on, right after the first MRIs, but they're doing more. So the hope, I think, is that it's a short IR stint rather than a season ender, which, short IR stint still hurts. And I still think they might, we'll get into the trade talk later, but I still think they might make a move for receiver.
Yeah, we definitely had a little bit of news coming recently on trade talks, but moving on to another game for recapping, the Commanders. The Commanders went against the Cardinals. I had picked the Cardinals to win, and Jaden Daniels continues to ball.
Yeah, I saw his college stats that led to him winning the Heisman, and I was like, there's no way he keeps this up in the NFL. He's keeping it up in the NFL, unfortunately for the league. It's not as crazy as it was in college, because of course not, but the same, very safe, very high efficiency play that he had in college is happening in the league with, I would say, worse weapons, shockingly.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. He had Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, you see what Neighbors is doing, and you see what Brian Thomas even is doing in Jacksonville. And the O-line of LSU, I feel like, is really good too. I would trade the Patriots O-line for the LSU O-line in a heartbeat.
You might just do that. I don't know when all of them are draft eligible, but it might end up happening. You never know.
I think his name's Will Campbell. He's one of the top O tackles this year, and I'm really hoping the Patriots take him, because, God, we need it. But anywho, yeah, Commanders look amazing. Terry finally has a guy who can throw him an accurate pass, and we just hope that it's not an RG3 type thing where he looks stupid good, and then, injury type thing happens and he's done. And we hope that doesn't happen.
A dark cloud just formed over my head when you said that. That was horrible.
A dark cloud just formed over Jaden Daniels' head too. He is scared.
Yeah, going from one dominating team who has a mobile yet thin quarterback, we move on to a dominating team with a mobile and somewhat thin. This is the Ravens beating the Bills. That's what I was getting into. The Ravens, another pick I got wrong where I had picked against the Ravens, kind of favored the undefeated Bills. The Ravens got back. Now they're 2-2, and that was a dominant performance right out the gates with the Derrick Henry run. Was it
87, I think.
87?
Oh, it was 87.
I mean, that was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a big Derrick Henry guy. I have been for a while. I talked about it in the 2,000-yard rusher video that I did. And I mean, we're both, you're a Derrick Henry guy too. We both love the guy. And it's cool to see him kind of crushing the whole age talk for running backs, where he's in his 30s and still gashing 87-yard touchdown runs when speed is not his. I mean, it's not that he's not fast. It's that he is a more powerful runner than he is fast. And he's still
power is his forte.
Speed. Yeah.
So seeing him break off an 87-yard touchdown without breaking any tackles was like, oh, wow. Yeah,
this is what happens when you put him behind a good line.
Yeah, with Patrick Card making a key block on that too.
Yeah, he does have a 99-yard run against the Texans, so he's got that under his belt. That was a couple of years ago in Tennessee, but
no beating that. Sadly, he's hit his height there, but he's having a great year so far with the Ravens and their scheme and just the way that they run the ball effectively. The Titans, it was more of like, we better run the ball effectively because we have no other option. The Ravens, they don't have to just win with the running, but they win with just running a lot of the time because they can. They will manhandle you and they will make sure it happens.
Yeah, they're a rushing dominant team that can also pass very efficiently when they need to. So they're a fun team to watch. They just are. They're good in all aspects except for sometimes Harbaugh makes some questionable decisions. But as far as like on the field talent, they're some of the best and some of the most fun to watch. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that I don't dislike the Ravens for any reason. Because I feel like I've got a couple teams that I'm just not a fan of. Like I can never be a fan of, even if they're playing amazing football. And so I'll watch them and I'll see them play good football, and I'm like, damn, why are they playing good football? They don't deserve it. And the Ravens, it just puts a smile on my face watching them. Watching Lamar in the pocket, we gushed over that for like 20 minutes last season. But yeah, can get into Monday night if you want to with your team, the Lions.
I say we start chronologically and we start with the worst game. That
I actually
was on.
don't think we should. I don't think there's much to talk about there. We can
Nothing
go
much
the
to talk
Lions.
about on that crap of a doubleheader.
Yeah. You know what? I'll be the first to admit it. I was wrong about Tyler Huntley. The Snoop Express, I think is what I titled that short.
You did.
It has
Yep.
crashed. It's derailed, unfortunately. I do think that I was a little bit optimistic with, a week in the system being enough to successfully run the Dolphins system. I don't think I understood how difficult that system is to learn and run. And I guess there is a little bit of hope that maybe he gets better, but I still think they're in trouble without Tua. And until Tua comes back, I think they may lose all of the games.
I mean, I think it's hard to say that he won't get better. Hopefully he doesn't get worse after the stat line, the performance that was. But, he did go against a Titans D-line that has proven to get after quarterbacks. They started out the season doing it in a, nail-biter of a loss against the Bears. But, Caleb Williams was running for his life. And they are just kind of a strong D-line, and they have been for a while. So I'm not super worried after the 1 week, and then you have to go against that. It spelled trouble for them right out the gates. But yeah, it's looking like Tua was less of a game manager than everyone said, and he's actually pretty crucial in his processing for how to operate that offense.
Yeah. On the Titans defense, especially the D-line, T'Vondre Sweat is a massive man out of Texas, rookie, and he plays very, very well. They had it 4th and 1 multiple times and went for it and chose to run outside and didn't get it both times. And the only reason they chose to run outside was because T'Vondre Sweat was in the middle. Mm-hmm. And if a rookie is instilling that much fear in a run-dominant team, that's pretty scary. It's not a good look for the rest of the league. Yeah.
And now onto the good football game, which occurred on Monday night. Not the shit show of the week as we had predicted. Onto the Lions and Seahawks. This was a very thrilling game. The final box score kind of made it seem like the Lions played a much better game than the Seahawks, but the Seahawks played really, really well on offense. Geno Smith was having a hell of a night. He was making runs when he needed to because, we often go to man defense, and he would see that and he would just go take the first down where he could get it. I think that Jared Goff having an 18 for 18 game was pretty darn cool to watch. But receiving touchdown for Jared Goff was something I never thought I would ever see happen, and that was thrilling. I thought Penei Sewell receiving first down was going to be like the coolest thing I saw. It got topped. Unfortunately, I wasn't at this game like I was at the Penei Sewell catch one, but it was great to see. And then, hitting Jamo over the top for a 70-yard touchdown. The Lions got into their bag for sure with this one. They were pulling out all of the trick plays. the Seahawks pulled out a little bit of a trick play too, where they passed it to JSN, and he like passed it, lateraled, but passed it across the field to, I believe it was Kenneth Walker, on like, kind of out on the like cross field, hit him, and he was running, got a first down on that play. So that was very interesting. But just a really great offensive performances from both teams. Of course, the later end of it was stoppages from the Seahawks going for it on fourth down because they needed to, and that kind of let the game get away from them. It was a poor game for Terry and Arnold, and for holding calls on our DBs. Carlton Davis also got a handful of them. But when you're going against, DK Metcalf, JSN, and Tyler Lockett, it's going to be a game where you would rather have a holding, that's a 5-yard penalty, than possibly the, 40-yard touchdown you could have let up. So Terry and Arnold still...
Even better, a missed holding call or a missed DPI.
True.
I don't know if you've seen the tackling DK before the ball gets there in the end zone, but that if you watch the clip, it's pretty egregious.
I saw that we were called for one, but
no, there was one that was a no call that people are up in arms about, and I watched the clip and I was like, "Yeesh, that's a tackle," and the ball is not there yet.
There was another bad one of I'm thinking about DK in the end zone. A bad call where it seemingly was a receiving 2-point conversion.
Yeah, knee down.
Yeah,
called incomplete, reviewed incomplete.
Yeah, there was a call on the play, and they accepted the penalty, but they never saw that it was a completed knee inside the white line. So that was the whole thing as well.
Apparently, that one was reviewed and confirmed to be an incomplete pass to DK. So, I don't know. I think that happened after the fact, but they reviewed it and said, yeah, that was incomplete. So accepting the penalty was the right call. But there was two questions I had for you, or two things. One, it was Charbonnet, not Kenneth Walker, that Jason pitched to. So
gotcha.
Check that one because I thought I saw it. I thought I saw a 2-digit number on the jersey, and I was like, I know Kenneth Walker wears 9. So, anywho, the offensive pass interference on Tyler Lockett. How did you feel about that call?
I mean, it was weak, but it wasn't like non-existent. Like, there's definitely been pick plays that have been run that looked exactly like that, and it was not called. Okay. And there's a lot more of a gripe when they run the route, they square up with a guy, and they shove arms into him. Now, he didn't do all of that. He more so ran up towards the guy, got in his way. And that's another way that people run pick plays, and that's kind of how they get away with it. So it's one that was not expected. It didn't look that bad. But then they also called other calls that game of the offensive pass interference when it's like, oh, you ran towards them and didn't get out of their way, basically. There was one on Brock Wright, I believe, on us. And it was like, okay, yeah, it looked like it, but also not really. So there were a couple kind of ticky-tack ones like that throughout that game.
I unfortunately was tasked with watching the Dolphins game, tasked by myself, or my love of Tyler Huntley, with watching the Lions game the Dolphins game instead of the Lions game. So I was unable to see that, but I did see a couple things from Seahawks Twitter where they were really unhappy about that. But one thing that I will call out Seahawks Twitter on, they were talking about how they were down they were really badly injured, like a lot of hurt players, and still felt good about the game. And I'm like, how many players on the Lions are hurt right now? Like how even of an injury matchup is that? Because I know the Lions are hurting with injuries.
They showed it pregame. They did like the side by side who's inactive. There was as many players inactive, and I'm not a Seahawks follower. I knew some of their names. I know all of ours because obviously, but I would say that it seemed like we had an even matchup there. And then even the the commentators during the broadcast, they said, that other teams across the league to these two teams who are battling injuries, they're saying Crimea River because they have worse injuries on their rosters.
that kind of wraps up our game by game recap. And now we can get into a little bit of trade talks if you would like. There is as of we record on Tuesdays, as of recording about 2 hours ago, I think Devonte Adams informed the Raiders that he would prefer to be traded. I'm not going to say that he requested a trade. He just told the Raiders that he would prefer it if he was traded. And the Raiders are looking for a second round pick plus for their compensation.
Yeah, I think the telling thing here is that the rumor of what the team is asking other teams for is more so than like, oh, hey guys, I might kind of want to maybe be traded, please. I think the team like setting a price is kind of telling for what they might think they could get for him. And, it'd be cool to see him on the Chiefs. It's not going to happen. You're right. He's probably, if he's traded, probably going to go to the Jets. But to undermine the boring talk, I want to throw a wrench into it and say, what team do you think should make the trade for him that isn't being considered as like the top contenders for it?
Maybe the Saints as a sneaky, like, send Rashid Shaheed and reunite him with Derek Carr yet again, because that's why he got traded to the Raiders in the first place, was to play with Carr. And now that they're rolling with a fun offensive system, I think that'd be a really cool spot to see him go. It's also interconference, so it's NFC AFC, so it's not like there's any conflict for the Raiders in that trade.
Yeah, my outer conference, my team also happens to be outer conference, and I am leaning towards, maybe it's just a wild idea and I'm just having some fun because I really like a handful of players in this team, but maybe Commanders? Because you've set yourself up to have, a quarterback you believe in right now. So, I mean, you go ahead, you give him a weapon. You already got Terry McLaurin, and you give him a really strong wide receiver option. When there was previous talk about them trading for a wide receiver,
the previous talk was because Ayuk and Daniels were teammates in college, and so I think that if they didn't trade for Ayuk, I don't think they trade for Devontae, but maybe they do, and I think that'd be a fun spot for him to go. I definitely think that would be good for Jaden Daniels, and it'd be good for the Commanders in general. So good for Jacob as well.
Yeah. And then there's another wide receiver you were talking about who I do think could end up as a Chief. And
yeah, the Browns to Chiefs. The Browns to Chiefs pipeline is real, and Amari Cooper is the one we've got, the guy we think might be on the move there. The Browns recently converted all of his 2024 salary to, I believe, a signing bonus, or they converted it somehow so he doesn't have a cap hit for this year. His cap hit's under $1 million for this year. So if they decide to trade him, it's a friendly deal for the Browns where they're not on the books for a bunch of money, and they don't have a big dead cap hit.
Yeah.
The Browns do not look good. The sequence of events that I would like to see play out would be the Browns start Jameis Winston for 2 or 3 weeks, see how the offense looks then, and then make a decision on Amari Cooper. Because if you can put Jameis in and you can get the Joe Flacco effect, basically, where you've got a guy coming in, and I'm not going to say it again.
You're not going to do it again, but it's in my mind.
Yeah, I know. It's in mine as well. You get a guy coming in who's just like a big arm, fun guy to watch, and that's exactly what Jameis is, and that's exactly what Joe Flacco is. And he revitalizes that offense. Cool. If you put him in and it's still a anemic offense that can't get anything going, ship him off for a 4th round pick and reap the benefits of being a trash football team, or lack thereof.
Yeah, I mean, they're not good. I don't think they will be good. They should blow up the whole team, and they should make one notable cut as the start of their explosion. But I won't go any further on that tangent.
Man, I could really use a massage right now.
Yeah, my neck's kind of hurting.
Yeah.
And a little lower. And a little lower. On to the NFL stocks.
Oh yeah. All right, just a quick refresher on the rules for the stocks. I had it pulled up somewhere. Here we go. We are still capped at 2 shares per team per member. Last season we upped the restriction to 2 teams or two shares. Now, since we started out at 2, we're not increasing it until week 6. And I think that's the only thing I need to update. But basically, the values are based on win-loss percentage. So right now it's really easy because there have been 4 games played for every single team. So it's if you're 1-3, you're worth $250. If you're 2-2, you're worth $500. If you're 3-1, you're worth $750. And if you're 4-0, you're worth $1,000. And then if you're 0-4, cough cough Jaguars, you're worth $100. There are no free stocks. So that is everything. So to refresh on who has what, it's on the screen now, right above us. But I will go through it. I have 2 shares of the Chargers stock, 2 shares of the Panthers stock, 2 shares of the Bengals stock, and 1 share of the Bears stock. And then you've got 2 shares of Chargers, 2 shares of Falcons, 1 share of Broncos, 1 share of Packers, and 1 share of Panthers. I have included the initial cost for all of our teams. Y'all can't see it, but we can, so that we can make informed decisions about, hey, is this team, has it increased in value? Has it decreased in value? Is it worth selling? But if you want to talk about your stocks, go for it.
Yeah, I will, I'll kick us off with a move because as we can still buy, this isn't just like, oh, we're going to sell episode. We can still buy, the stocks that are coming in at a cheap price. And I left myself with $450 in the bank, but I'm feeling like I need to up that capital. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sell one of my Chargers stocks, which are currently sitting at 500 value each. And that is going to increase the money in my bank to 950. But as I've made a transaction, as I've made a move, I'll go ahead and switch to whatever move you are going to make.
So, I actually don't know if I want to make any moves this week, except for selling the Panthers. So I bought 2 shares of the Panthers stock. They were $125 each. So if they were 0-4 right now, I would have lost $50. And I would have been quite okay with that. But because they won that one game when Andy Dalton came in as the savior, they are now worth $250 apiece. So they have doubled in value. I am getting out of that, selling 2 Panthers stocks and adding $500 to my bank to get it up to $1,325.
That's a sizable bank account there, especially with a lack of moves coming from you.
Yeah, I will say right now, so my big problem is the Bengals, where I purchased 2 shares of the Bengals stock and they were valued at $550 a piece, and they are now worth $250 a piece because they started off slow. I do think, and I don't think this is like an outlandish take, they are going to get better, they are going to win more games, and they're going to be worth more money. However,
you can't buy them at this.
We are
price.
Still capped at 2, so I cannot purchase at $250 a piece. I would love nothing more than to purchase at $250 a piece. And basically everybody else, I'm just not sure if I can believe in them. Like the Jaguars, should I buy them at 100? Absolutely, I should. But I don't. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna buy 2 shares of the Jaguars at 200 or at 100 a piece. So this is kind of the no-brainer because they can never be worth less than 100 a piece. So buying 2 shares of the Jaguars is basically just only good things can happen. And I'll be down to $11.25 in the bank account. But
alrighty.
Yeah.
And with your 2 transactions, we kind of go in a little snake formation here, and I'll go ahead and I'll get the matching out of the way here with selling my Panthers stock. I'll go ahead and clear that for myself, and that gives me 250 back, and that gives me 250 back into my bank account. So going from 950 up into 1,200, where I'm currently sitting, is a sizable bank account. And now, as it snakes back to me and I get to make my third transaction, I'm going to go ahead and also match you with the purchase of the 2 Jaguars. That was something I saw, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be doing that. And then, of course, you steal my thunder by doing it right before me. So this little rendition of mine is just copying your snaking, but whatever.
A couple to watch as you're typing all that in. The Cardinals are 1-3 right now, and they play the 49ers this week, which is a tough matchup. So if they drop one here, they're going to get even cheaper, and that'll be a team that I think about picking up. But I'm not going to do it at 250 when I think they could lose next week. The let's see, any other 1-win teams. I mean, obviously the Bengals we're watching. The Rams are tough to buy into at 1-3 at 250 because of injuries. So it's hard for me to do that. Same with the Dolphins. Because Tua's hurt, I think they could continue to drop games and get even cheaper. And then the Browns are the other 1-3 team where absolutely not going to happen. I'm not.
Yeah, nope, not even thinking about it.
Nope.
The Rams you mentioned, yeah, I think that they are a good purchase for maybe like 3 weeks down the line when they start getting some weapons back, some health back. But right now it's hard to buy into a injured team. So is there any moves for you to respond to my...
Yeah, I started looking at it a little bit more. The 49ers are sitting at 2-2, and the Ravens are sitting at 2-2. And I think both of those teams are better than 2-2. So I'm going to pick up, basically using all of my money, 1 share of each the 49ers and the Ravens. So I'll be spending 500 on the 49ers and 500 on the Ravens. And it's hard to buy in at 500 because it is such a high buy-in price. But I do think that both of those teams are going to finish the season above 500, and I just can't not pick them up right now while I have the funds to do so. So I think, sorry to make 2 moves, but I was going to buy 2 shares of the 49ers, and then I saw the Ravens right below them also at 500, so...
Well, no, those are your 2 allocated moves for the snake.
The snake, there. True. Yeah.
So, you go ahead and you've dropped your bank account down to 125. And then after my purchase of the Jags, I didn't say it, but I'm sitting at $1,000 in the bank. So I could do a move like you of purchasing a couple 500s and, go 0 in my bank account and really hope for some profit here. I may play it a little bit safer and just spend 500 to kind of keep that capital for next week. I'm looking at a couple teams that I think are going to lose this week, but I am hopeful to get into the week after that. So I think I'll be doing that. And I think the team that I'm most interested in buying in at 500 on is... I have a few options. I'm looking through them again now to verify my options. And... it's going to be the Ravens. I'm matching you. We're kind of keeping that same similar thing going. But I was leaning Ravens. You picked them up. I'm not going to let your monetary ideas clash with mine. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up 1 Ravens stock. And that's going to drop me 500 of my bank account down to 500 in my bank account. And that has me now... sitting at owning a solid 8 stocks right now. So 8 stocks in 6 different teams. I'm feeling very confident with the slate I have as well.
I have 9 in 6 different teams, and I think the only difference between our moves is I did not sell one of my Chargers stocks, and I had a little bit more money to play with. I didn't spend as much as you did in the initial buying period. But the thing about the Chargers is they're going into a bye week, so there's no real reason to sell right now. They're not going to drop or increase in value, and it gives me an extra week to see the teams that I think I might want to buy. Teams like the Cardinals that could lose this week, if they end up dropping one this week, I might pick them up by selling my Chargers stock next week. But there's just a couple that I want to keep an eye on that I'm not quite confident in or confident enough in to buy, and holding on to the Chargers stock does no harm for me. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do that.
Yeah, I had the inverse ideology where, okay, the Chargers aren't going to have a chance to win this week, so the value is not going to go up. after this week, I'm going to sell them now as opposed to next week. So I sold them now to get that extra bank. And I'm glad I did because it leaves me enough in my bank that I ended up having enough to play with, feeling comfortable enough to buy the Ravens I just did.
Yeah.
So heading into next week, I do have still 500, which, you could say, oh, you could have kept it in the Chargers. There's no need. I'd rather have the money available now to play with.
Yeah, there's no real difference in what we did with selling the Chargers versus keeping them. However, if I had the extra money, I probably would have spent it. So it's probably good that I don't have that extra money. But the idea of converting 2 shares of the Chargers stock into 2 more shares, one of the 49ers and one of the Ravens, is a very, very tempting idea. But I don't think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to play it a little bit safer and just hold off for one more week. The Ravens are going into a tough game with the Bengals where they could drop one, so I don't want to just dump my money in at 500. And the 49ers are also going into I don't know if I'd consider it a super tough game against the Cardinals, but it's a divisional matchup against a team that I think is pretty decent. So I think I'll hold off on making any more moves.
So that'll wrap up our stocks for the week. Happy with the moves I made, happy with the profit I made. And
yeah, you're killing it so far. The net worth 3,700 versus my net worth 3,300. You spent a little bit more at the start, and you ended up making a little bit more. So
I'm cashing in on that extra money I shelled out early on. Now I'm switching to the kind of, okay, we'll wait and see. We'll try to play it a little safer. But moving into our pick'ems, and we do have a brand new aspect of our pick'ems, which I think I'll defer to you to speak on.
Yeah, I just closed out the pick'em sheet. I was just clicking around. I'm sure you heard the clicks, and I just accidentally hit the X on the pick'em sheet. Anywho, so up in that top left corner, you will notice a little ChatGPT pick or GPT picks. So I have gone ahead and last week I had ChatGPT guess the slate of games. It went 7-9, which isn't great, but I was able to use the week of having it guess, knowing its answers, and then using that to then inform this week. So starting it a week early gives it that at least 1 week of additional knowledge outside of what it can get on the internet. So I've gone ahead and I've asked ChatGPT to make selections for this week, and they will be up in that top left corner as we pick our teams. We won't be talking about the selections at all. I don't have explanations from ChatGPT on why it picked certain teams, but they will be flashed up there while we're picking immediately off the start. I'm not going to be like, and ChatGPT picks, and then flash the logo up there. It'll be up there right from the start. So,
yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I'm looking at it and I see a pattern.
Do you
I'm
now?
looking at
Is it
the teams
home
it picked.
games? Home teams? Do you think it picked a lot of home teams? It actually, so shockingly enough, it picked mostly away teams last week, saw that it didn't work, and it's like, all right, let's go home teams. But let's get into this one. Starting off Thursday night football, we've got Buccaneers at Falcons, a divisional matchup. The Bucs heading to Atlanta. Short trip for them from Tampa to Atlanta. And I've got the home team Falcons in this one. I feel like whenever it's a divisional matchup, I always end up leaning home team when it's one that I can't really justify either way. And I'm going to continue that trend here, picking the Falcons. I don't really have any reason to do it. They are both in the same, or in a similar tier in my mind, at least, where they're both solid teams with a lot of question marks that have some questionable losses on their record. So,
yeah, I this was the one that was giving me the most trouble with trying to pick a winner. So I had gone a little deeper, and I was like, okay, how do I feel most teams would have a win versus loss rate? And so I ended up looking at both of their defensive and offensive rushing stats, because I think you win the trenches, you are able to control clock. That's a good indicator of whether or not you're a winning team. And they are basically in the same exact tier as you said. I think in both stats they are no more than 3 spots away from each other. So once again it ends up being who do I just feel in my gut is going to win this one? And I like the game that the Buccaneers are coming off of more than I like the game the Falcons are coming off of. The Falcons got that divisional win last week at home, and you're kind of sticking with that same mentality. But I'm going to go more with the Buccaneers, who beat the Eagles and got rolling, I think that they're going to end up beating the Falcons here, especially with, I feel, you know, Bijan, the Falcons' rushing attack. I'm still very confident in the Buccaneers' defensive line and their rush defense, despite the fact that they've yet to really culminate that together this year. So I'm going to go Buccaneers this week.
Yeah. I can definitely see it. I do think the Bucks are rolling. They just had a great game against the Eagles, but I'm also, I mean, we're both pretty low on the Eagles, so I don't really hold that win too highly.
Mm-hmm.
For morale, it's probably really high, but at the same time, Falcons beating a divisional opponent, heading into another divisional game, with the offense just continuing to get more cohesive as well, I think is why I'm leaning Falcons there. But if you want to lead us into the next one, this is a London
Yeah.
game, an early morning one.
I will be leaning us off into that early morning game of the Jets at, well, I don't know, London, but against the Vikings, Jets Vikings. I'm going to be leaning with the Vikings here. Um, they are really against the onslaught of good quarterbacks in a row. And, this one keeps up that trend. It was a lot closer of a game last week, but the Jets also narrowly lost to the Broncos last week. So everything's, throw that out the window. This is a new week, new game. I'm going to still stick with the Vikings, though.
Yeah, the Broncos have proven so far this season to be an extremely potent defense. They've stopped basically everybody they've gone against, and it's been kind of scary to watch. So to see them stop Aaron Rodgers and the Jets is very interesting. To see them just stuff Breece Hall completely is also really odd. I will also be going with the Vikings here. I'm agreeing with you there. I think they're on a big roll and they don't show any signs of slowing down. Jordan Addison coming back last week and just popping off means that they've got two extremely good receivers that Sam Darnold clearly can get the ball to if they were successful last week in that. And I think that despite Sauce Gardner being very good, he can only cover one receiver at a time. So I think whoever he's not on is going to be the one to feast. And even the one he is on, maybe Sam Darnold targets him and fits it in a couple of tight windows like he did last week with that Justin Jefferson touchdown, because that shit was crazy.
Yeah.
Then the first game of the noon slate, Panthers at the Bears. This is the Bryce Young pick game. This is the Bears need to win this one to prove that they won that trade. And despite the fact that they very clearly did win that trade, I think that they still do need to win this game. And I've got them here taking this one at home. Caleb and that offense is gelling more than ever. And Shane Waldron, not a great offensive coordinator. They've gone from not great to not great, but I do think they pick this one up anyways against a weak Panthers team.
Yep. I think that the Bears win this one, although I do think that it will be more off of the back of their defense than off of the back of Caleb Williams in that 1v, first overall versus first overall pick matchup there. And then heading...
Andy Dalton versus Caleb Williams.
True. But the teams, basically. Yeah, the trade for the picks. And then next up, we do have the Ravens heading into Cincinnati, going against the Bengals. And, the Ravens are rolling. It's a divisional matchup, so it'll always be a little bit tighter. But I'm still going to be leaning the Ravens. I think that the Bengals lose this one, and they fall to 1-4. And then the usual conversations spark up, and then they kind of get themselves fixed, put back together.
Yeah, this was tough for me during the stocks to not sell the Bengals stock going into this one and then pick it back up after a loss. But because it is so close, I just held on to it. I also have the Ravens in this one, but I do think it's going to be a very close game, and I think the Bengals could very well pull this one out. Like we said, divisional games, they're basically always a toss-up, even if it's a good team against a bad team. We saw that last week with the Giants almost beating the Cowboys. And then the Bills going against the Texans in Houston. This one, I'm not too confident either way, but because the Texans just had a narrow victory against the Jaguars, the Bills did get boat raced by the Ravens, but I think they'll want to come back and make a statement. And the Texans are looking a little weaker this season. They had a loss in week 3, if I'm remembering that correctly. Yeah, the Vikings beat them in week 3. Tough team to go against. Then they barely beat the Jags. I think the Bills pull this one out. I'm so close to switching that pick to the Texans. But I think
If it'll impact whether or not you flip, do you want to know what my pick is?
Yeah, if we have the same pick, I'll flip.
Okay, so I originally had picked the Texans, and then I actively flipped to the Bills. So
All right,
do we want to both?
I'll
We're
flip
both
to the
flipping.
Texans.
All right, cool.
All right. So you're flipping as well. You're flipping back to the Texans as well.
No, I will stay on the Bills. You can flip to the
Okay.
Texans, and we'll
Okay.
we'll we'll rock with each other's original gut instincts
All
and
right.
see how that
So
goes.
flip that logo above me to the Texans from the Bills, and you get the Bills logo over your head, and we meet back next week when it's a tie game, and we were both wrong.
And the next game, we just spoke on this team, the Jaguars at home defending against the Colts, divisional matchup. You said you lean home game. I'm a lean away game. The Colts, the Jags. I think the Jags are definitely like starting to maybe look a little better, especially when you compare it to the Colts. But I think the Colts just went against a very, hard-nosed Steelers defense, and that was kind of a shootout of a game. I'm going to go with the Colts here. They stood the test against a good defense, and I don't trust the Jaguars defense.
I'm man. I'm gonna pick against the Colts again. I'm picking the Jaguars in this one. I think the Colts could win it. I think it's very likely, but the Jaguars need one. They need a game. They need to win one. They're not a bad enough team to go 0-5 and still have not won a game since Thanksgiving last year. They're not that bad, and I think this is the one they pick up. Next week they play the Bears, which is another one they could pick up, but I got to go with the home team in the divisional matchups that I don't know. So I'm leaning them. Then we get into a divisional matchup involving my team, the Patriots, my boys. They're gonna lose, unfortunately, to the Snoop Huntley led Dolphins. I got the Dolphins in the, I said divisional matchups, pick the home team, but I don't think the Patriots are worth shit this year. I think my bold prediction about them after week 2, I think, or week 3, where I was like, they could be good. They're not. And another week of Tyler Huntley in the offense can only look better, and the Patriots offense has never looked worse.
Yeah, you know the Patriots a lot more than me. So how has their defense looked the past 2 weeks? Because I
Christian
know how they
Gonzalez
looked
has
the
been
first two.
fine. Christian Gonzalez has been good. He's been a bright spot. Basically everything else is just like there are bright spots, but the defense as a whole has not been good. It's
Okay.
not been a good unit. It looked a lot better under Belichick, and I was kind of rose-colored glasses. I was staring at the defense and being like, this could be a good unit. This could be just as good. Gerard Mayo was implementing Bill's system for the past few years, so I thought that maybe it would not fall off at all. It has definitely fallen off, and I really don't believe in them at all against the Dolphins, even though divisional matchup, and
Yeah,
I'm not 100% sure.
I was flip flopping on it. I had originally thought Dolphins, and then the Dolphins game went how it went, and I was like, and then I was like, okay, Patriots defense, they're generally good. They generally play good against the Dolphins, but it's also not late enough in the season where I think the Dolphins have a huge away team disadvantage when they head up north. So I'm gonna be going with the Dolphins here. A little hesitant on it, but I will be sticking to my guns there with that one.
Yeah, if I pick against the Patriots, I can be happy either way. Because if they win, hooray, we won a game. Oh my god! And if they lose, I got the pick right.
Yeah. Alrighty, and then onto the Browns at Commanders game. I got the Commanders in this one, and I also have my lock of the week on the Commanders over the Browns here. I'll go ahead and drop that lock, and you know it's everything we said. I hope they lose this one. Ship off Amari Cooper, blow up the whole organization, move the Browns. Actually, everything that you could think of happening to the franchise as a whole, hope it happens. Yeah, all within this 1 week. All because
They're
they
getting
lose
sent to
the
Argentina, guys.
They are now the London Monarchs. Shout out Madden. Don't shout out.
No, don't
Shout out
shout
Madden,
out
the
Madden.
coach. Don't not the game. I meant the coach. Clearly,
Yeah,
he loved
All right.
the London Monarchs.
yeah. I also have the Commanders in this one pretty handedly. I do think that they are just by and large the better team. And Jaden Daniels is rolling, that offense is rolling, the defense is doing what they need to, and the Browns are the exact opposite. So is this the perfect trap game? Yeah, it is. But I'm not picking the trap game. I'm not guessing that. And then we get into I'm gonna probably go ahead and call this one, or no, sorry. Back to the Dolphins Patriots. Go ahead and stamp it up there. Shit show of the week for that game with two terrible teams at the moment. I was gonna
And
say Raiders Broncos could be, but
and we'll go over our game of the week at the end here, but there's definitely a couple contenders. But I will
yeah,
let us finish our pickups
yeah,
before
for
we get
sure.
there.
So Raiders at Broncos is the next game up on the docket, and I definitely don't fucking know what to think. The Raiders are a dysfunctional organization as ever. They won last week, but does it really mean much when it's against the Browns? I don't think so. I got the Broncos in this one. They've got a better defense, and Devontae Adams is probably not going to play for the Raiders ever again. So, out your top receiver against Pat Surtain, which means he's going to be covering Jacoby Myers, and you're going to be throwing to Trey Tucker. And you is Gardner Minshew. So Gardner Minshew throwing to Trey Tucker as the only feasible connection in that offense doesn't instill confidence in me whatsoever.
Yeah, I'll be matching you with the Broncos here, and yeah, they played a better team in my eyes last week, and it was a 10-9 win. So I'm not saying it's going to be an exciting win for the Broncos, but it'll be a divisional win, so it'll be a one to celebrate for sure. And then
Yeah.
next up with the Cardinals and the 49ers, this one is hard because of how electric the Cardinals have shown they can be, but you know, it's been a couple weeks and they've faltered since. So I've got to lean with the home team here of the 49ers, who admittedly haven't had their best games, but they are still racking in wins at the end of the day.
I'm just looking back. So far, I have not predicted a Cardinals game correctly the entire year. I guessed them over the Bills in week one, which didn't happen. I then guessed the Rams to beat them in week two, which didn't happen. I then guessed them to beat the Lions in week three, which didn't happen. And then I guessed them to beat the Commanders last week, which didn't happen. So for my Cardinals pseudo fandom, I will be taking the 49ers in this one and hoping that I again get it wrong. I love seeing the Cardinals when they're explosive and when they're fun to watch, but I just think the 49ers are the better overall team, so I can't pick for the Cardinals this week.
I went ahead and looked back. I am in the same boat. I have not picked a correct Cardinals game yet. So if you're a Cardinals fan, there's hope.
Then we get into Packers at Rams. This is Jordan Love feeling a little bit more comfortable, and the Rams coming off of a loss to the Bears. I got the Packers in this one, though I'm not confident in it whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Packers pick. I think that it's difficult when you look at the first half against the Vikings, but the Vikings are a better defense than the Rams, and the Packers showed that they could stick it out and make it a close game in the end. So I'm also lean Packers. It's also, I was end of last week with the Rams and the Bears. I was thinking like, oh yeah, Stafford's got the ball. It's about to be a game-winning drive. He wins these, and then he threw a pick. So I can't lean Stafford making magic out of nothing. So I'm gonna be going with the Packers here. Then on to the Giants at Seahawks. Seahawks. I think we can move on.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way, so much so that is my lock of the week. Throw it up there. That is it. Seahawks over the Giants. Can't wait for Malik Neighbors to torch the Seahawks defense. But I actually think that they're one of the better defenses to match up with Neighbors, because they've got an athletic freak at cornerback and then just a technically sound corner on the other side. So whatever they need to lock up Malik Neighbors, they've got it. And then I don't think the Giants defense is good at all, and I think the Seahawks offense is very capable. Something we'll probably talk about next week with coaches on the hot seat, but with how well Geno Smith is looking this year and how well Baker Mayfield is looking this year, Dave Canales might not have had that much of an impact on them, especially with how bad Bryce Young looked. It may have just been him getting lucky with being on the right team at the right time.
And I'll have another coach to throw into that similar conversation next week. So tune in next week for that conversation. But let's finish up these pick'ems here.
Yeah. Into the Cowboys at the Steelers. The Steelers showed that they can be beaten. In fact, they lost last week. I think that they have a very good chance of beating the Cowboys after the Cowboys just had a close one to the Giants. But I'm still taking the Cowboys in this one. I think they're the better overall team. I think that it's just a tough one to predict, but I'm just the Steelers need to be closer to 500. They live there. They need to stay there, and that
They
involves
can't get
losing
too far
a
ahead
couple
of
of these games.
Yeah. That makes sense. I see your thinking there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think they do separate themselves from 500, as I have the Steelers beating the Cowboys in this one. You brought it up. Giants gave the Cowboys a scare, and the Steelers last week had one of their best games offensively. Not so much matching it on the defensive side to the heights that they had earlier this year. The offense fully gelling together is exciting. So I'm gonna have the Steelers in this one because despite the things despite the fact that they didn't win last week, they still had a cohesive offense, whereas the Cowboys seemed dysfunctional the whole game and as if they were actively trying to lose to the Giants. So when you're in that situation, it's not a good situation. I'm gonna go ahead and pick the Steelers. On Monday night, we have the Saints at Arrowhead against the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, they'll be going in without, the two top wide receivers they had on their roster heading into the season. And it's looking a little rough for them. But I still have the Chiefs winning this because I trust their defense a lot. The Saints, they had a great offense going, and the Saints have a good defense, but I think Mahomes just has that ability to check down to whoever. Juju is magically gonna actually produce. Shocker. But the Saints, who have a good defense, I don't think are gonna be winning the super ticky-tacky game, and it'll be a super low scoring game in my eyes. I think it'll be more Eagles Saints than Saints and Cowboys. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs here for the Mahomes factor, but I could easily see the Saints winning this one because of the absolute third stringers that the Chiefs are going to have out there at wide receiver.
Yeah. Everything in my heart is telling me to pick the Chiefs, that they're going to win, but there's just that there's something in there that's saying the Saints are going to take this one. I feel like it's a trap game for the Chiefs, and they're undefeated going into this one. They normally don't have, not normally, they, for the past few seasons, have not had the greatest starts, so I don't think they go into their bye week 5-0. I think they may drop this one. If for nothing else, just for the fact that, like you said, they're missing Rashee Rice, they're missing Hollywood Brown, who they haven't had all year, and then they're missing Isaiah Pacheco. Carson Steele did not look good. He fumbled, and then Kareem Hunt was basically the bell cow after that. And I think maybe some of them might be checked out because they're looking forward to their bye week so much. It's a late in the week game. It's a Monday night. So they're just, I don't know. I think that the Saints could pull this one out. And it's the same part of my brain that told me to pick the Giants against the Cowboys last week is what's telling me to pick the Saints here. Do I actually think the Saints are going to win? Probably not, but just the fact that they could makes me want to pick them and then
about it.
Be right. Yeah, I want to be right about this more than I care about being wrong if I pick it.
That's valid. And then for our game of the week mention, I have one in mind. I want to know what yours that you have in mind is first.
I think there's two that we talked about back to back that are definite contenders, and then one that's a bit of an underdog that I just think is going to be a pretty good game. I think Cardinals at Niners is going to be a very good game, but I don't feel comfortable enough calling that the game of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with Ravens Bengals being my game of the week, but I think you might be thinking Bills Texans.
I was leaning Bills Texans, but I do believe that we picked the Bills Ravens as game of the week last week. So to add some diversity to that, I'll match you. Well, actually, no, the Ravens were in that game too.
Yeah.
All right. Then I'll just go with my heart and see if you want to compromise to me or if you're going to make me compromise to you.
See,
Bills
I
Texans or
think
Ravens Bengals.
the difference for me is that one is a divisional matchup. So there's just that extra little bit of grittiness that happens in those. And also, the Bills got stomped last week, and the Texans didn't look great last week, which is what's leading me to believe that Ravens Bengals may be a better game.
Okay. The 2-2s versus the 3-1s.
No.
No, the 3-1 Bills and Texans and
Oh,
the
okay,
2-2s.
okay.
Yeah, I meant as like I was grouping them. But yeah, I think divisional, it has the extra goodiness. I will concede to the Ravens Bengals, although I do think with how they looked last week, the Bills and the Texans were both going to be coming in hungry, looking for a win there. But I will concede game of the week, Ravens Bengals.
We wanted to make a bit of a bigger emphasis this week on Game of the Week and Shit Show of the Week because I went and made stamps of them so that I could throw them up on that top corner of the screen. But yeah, that's the only reason that we're putting so much emphasis on it this week. And I think next week we should probably pick that before we start recording, just so that we don't have to go back and do it. But
deliberate.
You got anything else for this upcoming week that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Check out the Spotify. That's what we have getting up in this next week. Well, you know what happens this next week? We're on Spotify. You know what's been happening all the past weeks? We've been on Spotify. So if you want to check out the content on Spotify, do that. And, go ahead and hit the little follow button where it'll pop up in your feed every time we upload a new one. You can do that as well. And if you're not already subscribed, and if you are subscribed, make sure the bell is hit. Because, you decided to pass it off to me to say anything I wanted, so I'm just plugging, all right?
See, I meant more of are there any NFL topics that we didn't cover that you
I know
had
what
seen
you meant.
or that you
and
wanted
I
to get
decided
to, but
the one topic that we didn't cover was franchise tagged itself. So, yeah.
I respect the hustle, and I agree with the like button if you enjoyed. If you've made it this far especially, drop your thoughts down in the comments below, as we always tell you to do, and it never seems to happen except for Matt and Jacob. So shout out Matt and Jacob. Love the boys. And with that, I think that's all we got for you today. Stick around next week. Drop your pick'ems, drop your locks, all that good stuff. And with that, deuces.